sense of having to cross over a vast space it really limits the commercial viability of the space. And I just want to reflect on something that Walter Hood, the esteemed landscape architect, noted when he was working on this project early on in the Adeline Corridor project. He said, thinking about the Adeline Corridor as a corridor kind of misses the point. What we really need to be thinking about as a neighborhood that we weave together across the division that the street creates and Bart site creates. And so, just in terms of principles, how do we encourage people to go to the Bart station? Well, we love the flea market, we love the farmer's market, but they're both great, need to be part of the future, but they're insufficient. This project should be a mixed-use, new town center, really, with housing that's affordable and small businesses that can provide jobs for people and opportunities for local entrepreneurship. Thank you.
All right, well, here we go.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here. I just wanted to acknowledge all the comments that have been made. I've been here for 63 years, I guess, including I was born here, 64 years, just had a birthday. But I wanted to acknowledge the very fact that we have to do more. We have to be able to step outside the box. Berkeley is unique by the fact that we have been in the forefronts of movements and that we have made a difference around the world. If we look at this as just a project, rather than people being affected, then we're missing the point. Some of you are new to this neighborhood, and many of you may actually have been here as long as I have. One of the things that has been mentioned in this discussion is equity. The very fact is that Tim, you being a planner, you living in Berkeley, should be at least aware of the fact that some people are not given the same privilege as other people. There are people that actually have lost by the fact that they have been affected by prime loans. They have been affected by displacement. They have been affected by essentially the issues of redlining, and for that matter, basically being affected by the covenants that existed in the 60s. So when you look at that, you're looking at the history that exists throughout Berkeley and doing more and being able to have effect, being able to recognize that history and being able to come up with policies that dictates making a difference in this particular question. I'm not even going to answer the question of what we do, but I'm asking that you go beyond the particular dictums of just being able to do what normally most people say we need to build. We need affordable housing, but we need to deal with low-income housing. That's one of the issues. We need to also exist the very fact that certain people have been displaced, and how do you get them back in this community? Thank you very much.
All right, William.
Hi, thanks. I want to thank Councilman Bartlett and Mayor Eric for holding this forum. And I'm mostly really heartened by it because I hear us actually all agreeing that we want to see the flea market preserved, we want to see maximum amount of affordable housing here, we want to knit the neighborhood together. Those are all the things I want. I also want to let people know that technically, in terms of some of the way some of you have talked about it, I'm a gentrifier. And I want to say that because I work in the nonprofit community, but I got pushed out of San Francisco because I couldn't afford to live there anymore. So I moved to Berkeley where I could afford it. And I bought my house from an elderly African-American woman who was selling her house. She was moving to Pasadena to retire. So I now live in Berkeley. This is now my community because I got pushed out of where I was living. And I just want to point out that there's more of us coming. Because people are getting pushed out from all over the Bay Area, and wherever they can afford to go, that's where they're going to end up. Okay? The other thing I want to note is that the population of Berkeley, if you look back over the last 50, 60 years, it has barely changed. Okay? There is room for more neighbors in Berkeley, in my opinion. There's room on my block for more neighbors. I have plenty of room on my block for more neighbors. All right? I want more neighbors. I welcome more neighbors in Berkeley. But if you think we can hold the population the same and keep the community that we want to have here, keep in mind, there are more people coming here. So think about the people who have had to leave and the people who have been able to come here. If we grow the pie bigger, more people will be able to stay. So I just want to point out that we're facing some hard choices here. There's some reality of what's happening in these neighborhoods that we cannot deny. I don't want to see this community get decimated by that, but I think we have to make some choices about accepting, saying yes to more neighbors in our community, and keeping in mind all the things people have said here about our values, that we want to preserve that flea market, that we want maximum affordable housing on the site. I agree with all those things, 100%. I want to see that happen. I don't want to see more people get pushed out of Berkeley. But we have to make some choices here about what kind of community we live in. So, thank you, everyone.
Hi, I'm Helen Finkelstein. I'm on the board of the Ashby Flea Market. I'm one of those people that doesn't particularly like the term affordable. I think we are thinking about low-income housing that's available to people who don't have much money. So, a couple of things. If housing is built on the Ashby parking lot, we will be giving up open space, we'll be giving up community space that's valuable. I think we need to make a lot of demands for that housing, and not to compromise on something that, you know, sort of halfway what we want. 100% low-income housing, that might be something we want. Green stuff, sure. I'd like to repeat again something that Joe said, which is we're talking about the ability of low-income people to afford housing, to live in the community, but we also need to think about the vendors community, which are low-income people who are working to make a life for themselves. So there is a balance there. And I had one other thing I was going to say. Well, I don't remember what it was.
Good evening, I'm Jim Novosel. I've had a business in South Berkeley for almost 30 years along Alcatraz. I'm an intimate part of that group. Mrs. Smith and I planted trees along Alcatraz Avenue. She did trees west of Adeline, I did trees east of Adeline along Alcatraz. I'm also one of the early members of the Lorraine Business Association. When I think of the principles that should guide our thinking, what I first think of is the hundreds of people that used to live on the parking lot that were then evicted for the parking lot when Bart came in. Our first principle should be to knit that land back into the fabric of the city and make it a part of our city rather than just a big, pretty grim parking lot. I also think that the flea market is a tremendous asset. My kids used to go there all the time, and it's just a wonderful place, and there should be a permanent home for the flea market, as there should be a permanent home south of there for the farmers market. Be aware, though, that the scale of any housing that goes on in the Bart Plaza will be a different scale than the 1- and 2-story buildings that occurred on that land prior to the Bart parking lot construction and Bart. It will be a bigger scale, and I think we have to get used to that in that area. I hope it's not at the scale of the MacArthur BART station. If you start to go by there and see the immense housing that's going on there, it should be a Berkeley scale, and I think we can achieve that. I'd also like to mention that that we should move on it as fast as possible because the state is breathing down our necks. If we do not act, we will bring the state on us, and they're going to dictate things that we may not like. And if we can't get it together and the state does it, then we deserve what we get from the state. So I really hope that we can pull together as a group. The question you asked is the process, what process we should do. I can think of no better process than the downtown planning process that occurred almost 10 years ago now, in which 21 citizens gathered together, worked for about 3 years to produce a plan that pretty much was approved by about 82% of the population in a vote. It's been tweaked a little, but basically it's been a great plan. And that was done because we had an open public meeting, 21 citizens worked together from all walks of life. And I hope that would happen again. One last thing I have to say is that I have to say that the mayor's legacy, and you're in a councilman's legacy is going to be based on what you get built on the BART station. Just as Tom Bates left a tremendous legacy by helping create the Ed Roberts campus, which we all value, I look forward to you guys getting us together to build something on the BART stations, and that's going to be a real tremendous legacy. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dave Dolshaw. I live about 200 feet this side of the Ashby BART station for the last few years. I used to live in Southern California though, and it was in Orange County. And once upon a time that was hundreds of square miles, orange groves and agricultural land and seaside open spaces. And I have a lot of relatives that were very much involved in the construction industry. And they would come through and they would promise that zoning in a certain area got changed to be the way they wanted it to be, and they got the right building permits. They're going to do these wonderful things, and they're going to do this for the black folks, and this for the kids, and this for the seniors, and do this to preserve the environment. Everything's going to be wonderful. They'd get those permits, and they'd get those zoning changes, and by the time they got finished with that thing, they paved every square inch of that county, and filled with nothing but extremely expensive resorts for very rich people, and extremely high-priced luxury apartments and condos and that sort of thing, and they never did any of those things they promised to do for everybody else. And I only bring that up because from what I see around here is the construction industry operates by that exact same set of agendas and motivations, and those folks are not any less clever or aggressive or tenacious than the ones that were operating in Southern California. And I'm sure, just from what I've seen and heard, those folks are still here, and they see things like Ashby BART station parking lot and similar property to serve their agendas, not what everybody else has. And it won't matter what they promise unless we're very careful. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. First, I want to give love to the flea market, like everybody else. It's a great thing that we should preserve, and thank you to Ben Bartlett and Jesse Argan for this forum. My name is Gary Gibson. I lived in 2.5 blocks away from Ashby BART for a quarter of a century, and I'm in agreement with a lot of the things here, but there's one thing I haven't heard anybody talk about, and that is traffic management, traffic studies, and parking as a result of any projects that happen on Adeline. And that's because what you put there, it would be great if you could outblock cars, but that's about the only way you're going to keep whoever moves into these new housing areas to do without cars. They're going to bring cars, that's reality. And when they bring cars, if you take away parking, they're going to fill up the surrounding neighborhoods. There's no time parking in this part of South Berkeley, and it's already hard enough for the people that live there to park without the BART parking lot from daily commuters. So please, whatever you do, consider parking and the impact that the project will have on traffic on the surrounding neighborhoods. Our street used to be a very quiet street. Now it's a very dangerous street because people have been diverted down our street from other areas and are roaring down high speeds. Stop signs seem to only be suggestions to a lot of the new drivers I see in Berkeley these days. So please consider that. Also, this is Berkeley. I'm a little concerned about hearing about the number of units because that to me seems like Mabel Howard fought to keep BART underground and not towering over our neighborhoods. So are we then going to replace that with towering apartment blocks? This is Berkeley. There's got to be other ways to get that same kind of density without putting giant boxes in the area. I don't know what the answer is, but there are other ways of building buildings that get you that same kind of housing without having to go up and shadow the neighborhood. Green space, also someone mentioned. Let's not forget that. That's a good quality of life thing. Thank you.
Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Alfred, and what I want to say is that as we discuss the potential of adding homes to the Ashby station, we should really pay attention to what happens on the first floor under those homes. if we are to avoid the gentrification and the chain stores that we see taking over other places, we really need to make sure we have community control of that first floor. Possibly the flea market is given control of all the retail spaces. So picture this. You get off, you're coming home from work, you get off the Bart, you peep out through the fair gates, and you step out and you're into a nice town square, maybe the size of this room. There are vendors who are given both outdoor spaces as well as indoor market halls where they can operate and sell their goods every day of the week and make money every day.
Yeah.
As you go down the middle of this square, there are fruit stalls, there's food, there's music, there's artwork. You can get a taste of this actually down at the Fruitvale BART station, where a nonprofit-led effort created a transit village that has some of these features. That is operated by the nonprofit. It has both small business spaces, vendors, public services, and first floor spaces. That's what we can do here as well. Keep the ground floor under community control, keep it for local vendors, and we can have both the homes and the flea market together.
Sorry, I have a sore throat, so hopefully I can, you can hear me. My name is Teresa Clark, and I have been living in Berkeley, South Berkeley, for over 35 years. And my career has been in affordable housing, and I worked for the Northern California Land Trust, developed 10 projects in Berkeley, and then I worked for Affordable Housing Associates and developed 6 projects. So I probably built, about 300 units of affordable housing in Berkeley, so I do understand what it takes to build affordable housing. And one of the things that we need to make affordable housing a reality here in South Berkeley is we need funding for the subsidized housing, and we need it to be dedicated to South Berkeley. It needs to be dedicated to the Adeline Corridor Plan. It needs to be dedicated to the Ashby station. Because if we don't dedicate the little funding we have, it's not going to happen in our neighborhood. And we need to bring back the transfer tax for affordable housing. We had a transfer tax, the city council took it when we had a recession, and it's never been put back. But there was a transfer tax that went to affordable housing, to the Housing Trust Fund. In addition to the monies we've already passed, we need more. We need a lot more. Harbor Crossing, which is a senior that I worked on, it was 42 units. That's 125 units per acre. We need more. That project is not that big. We need 1,000 units of housing on the Adeline corridor, at least 1,000. And I believe we need 50% affordable. I don't believe we need 100% affordable, because we need both. Affordable, which is subsidized. When I'm saying affordable, I mean subsidized for 50% area median income and below. And we need 1,000 units. We really need that. It's been 40 years and nothing has been built in our neighborhood. And let me just finish with one last thing. When I'm on the zoning board and I have the zoning officials who have been appointed by you say, oh, living in a studio in this big apartment is inhumane. I said, living on the street is inhumane. My neighbors are living on the street, and we have to approve housing, whether it's affordable or market rate. We have to approve it, and our zoning board is not approving it because your appointees can't bring themselves to approve housing, and I don't understand it. It's our purview on the zoning board to follow the rules, and they're just deciding they don't want to because it's not affordable. The affordability comes from you subsidizing it. That's a separate issue. Zoning and subsidized housing are 2 separate issues. And if the council doesn't approve more funding for affordable housing, we're out of luck. That's why it's not going to happen. Not because there's some evil thing out there. It's because we're not really putting our money where our mouth is. We really need to.
please vote for the affordable housing bond we've placed on the ballot this November.
My name is Lawrence Sheckman, and I got here in 1964 when I was 21.
Excuse me.
And
Excuse me.
now I'm 75 on Social Security.
The mayor wanted to speak.
And I gave my hair in the cause of Berkeley. I want to support the people who are talking about 100% affordable housing. It is public land. Because I wanted to talk somewhat about the history of gentrification in Berkeley. It didn't start because of the computer industry. It actually started in the 70s when our dear Governor Ronald Reagan decided to charge a lot of tuition for the university, and poor students could no longer come in here. It's been going on for a very long time, and people ask what happened to the Berkeley of the 60s, where people used to sit out on the streets, not just protest, but play folk music and all kinds of games. Couldn't afford to live in Berkeley anymore, so a lot of it moved to Oakland. So we need 100% affordable housing to get to Berkeley where it once was. And it can't be the gentrified definition of affordable, because that could be an income of $50,000 or $60,000. I can't afford that on Social Security. No homeless person can afford it. So you have to make it really affordable for really poor people. Okay? The other thing I want to say is of a completely different nature. Okay, is that I'm a community organizer, and some of you probably know that I organize neighborhood vegetables where we help each other grow gardens. Next, I want to help organize the neighborhood village in small areas where we help each other with every skill and help each other out in every way we can. And I'm looking for fellow organizers, so I'm going to stand over there, and anybody who wants to help organize a big worker co-op for South Berkeley, come talk to me and I'll sign you up.
So, I just wanted to make a comment before the next speaker speaks, and I want to thank Teresa Clark for her comments. This City Council is strongly committed to addressing our affordability crisis. The biggest challenge that we face is we do not have enough revenue to be able to help nonprofits build low-income housing, to buy existing apartment buildings. So we are very committed to trying to find those sources of money, whether it's through impact fees from new development that will happen in the South Berkeley community, having community benefit requirements, as well as what Councilmember Bartlett had spoken about. The council has put on the ballot a $135 million affordable housing bond to fund housing for the homeless, for working families, and for teachers. And so I'm not going to advocate one way or another, but I want you to know that that is on the ballot. You will be considering that this November, and what we desperately need is additional revenue, because the federal government, as we know, is cutting off funding for public housing and addressing homelessness. And so it's up to us as a community to work together to address this crisis. And I want to thank you all so much for your comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Harrigan. My name is Matt Nichols, and I worked for the city of Berkeley for 13 years, and in the city for many years before that. I raised my kids here and did a lot of the work to get the Ed Roberts campus funded and built and over the finish line. It's great. It's a great asset, and it's actually greater than I think almost any of us dreamed. I won't speak for the other people who really had the big dreams, but it's more beautiful. But we also heard some of these same things. They had hundreds of meetings with people who wanted to say no to the project. The project shrunk. It took many, many years, and the price rose while that happened. And meanwhile, all those years, disabled people were driving all over Hellendon in the region, instead of getting their services at the Ashby Bart station, which helps us all and creates jobs in South Berkeley. That has excess parking in it. It was required by the city at that time, which was foolish, but now it provides us an opportunity to provide housing on the other side and to let the tenants use that parking in the evening and let the employees of Ed Roberts use it in the day. The other thing I want to say is that I'm actually here with a very sincere request, but it's something that makes me sad, is that when my kids were born, we were raising our family with friends of ours who live on Martin Luther King. Parents have died, and the children are 2 African American kids who are going to have to sell their house next week and are having to look in Stockton, or they don't know how to do it. They're 18 and 20 years old. And if anyone has a 2-bedroom place for 2 kids who've grown up here, who went to this school, I would really appreciate hearing about it. That's the gentrification that is happening, and the longer we stall at getting anything built, those people are going to be gone. What the man said about it will just happen. It will have happened. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Betsy Thagard, and I want to thank the mayor and council very much for putting that affordable housing bond on the ballot. We definitely need that, and we need it to be devoted to South Berkeley. I'm a teacher, which I'm afraid means that I have very low income, so I'm very much in favor of affordable housing. And I think that this is the most incredible opportunity now with this huge, right now it's just it's like a hole in the ground, really, just filled with cars, an ugly space that could be used to house so many people. We could build such great housing on the Ashby water, a lot of it, and that's what we need, is a lot of it. We heard at the very beginning, I think it was you, Councilmember Bartlett, who mentioned that for every 12 jobs we've created in the Bay Area in the last 10 years, we've only built 1 home. We need more homes for people. That's the key thing. I raised my family here, and my kids cannot afford to move back and live near me. We need homes for our children. And if they're going to be small homes, they're going to be studios and small places, that's okay, because my children recognize that they're living in a world that's got a lot of people in it that need houses. And they don't need great big places. They don't even need little bungalows. They just need simple, small places to live. And finally, I'd like to note that it's fantastic that we're going to have this bond. Everybody, please vote for it. But we also need to recognize that the people who build housing are developers. We can't just vilify developers and say they're all bad. We've got to recognize that they're the ones that do it. We need to make sure they do it right. But we also need to have the kind of housing in anything that's built that will incentivize them to build it. So we have to have not only mixed-use development, but we have to have development that mixes all kinds of incomes. There needs to be market rate housing so that the affordable rate housing gets built. If I was a young teacher trying to teach in Berkeley now, I would probably be commuting from Antigua. It's crazy. It's just crazy. We have to build housing that folks like me and my children can afford to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Councilmember Bartlett and the mayor for hosting this evening program. My name is Babalo Kwanele. I am a member of this community. I've been a long-time member of this community. My family are vendors at the flea market, and I certainly want to say about the concerns that I have for the housing. And certainly we do need low-income housing, very low-income, real low-income housing, rather than that is market rate. There are other buildings that are being built in the city of Berkeley that are market rate. I think that it's really important to maintain the integrity of the community. I do have a correction that someone mentioned about that Berkeley hasn't changed. Berkeley has changed in its demographics, hugely. And I want to say that the African American community in Berkeley has plummeted since then, and it is due to gentrification. We need to say the word for what it is. It is gentrification. People are being pushed out, forced out, tricked out of their homes. In our family, we've had new neighbors who are gentrifiers who were coming into the community that knocked on our door and asked us to sell our house to them because they didn't want to be renters anymore. Well, where are we going to live? So there is a certain line of ethics that should not be crossed. And I think it's very important to take a look at what's happening to the community that drew people here in the first place, to Berkeley, the diversity of Berkeley, the true diversity of Berkeley. So look at and be respectful of that. I want to encourage people to take a look at the City of Berkeley Health Status Report. We are in a crisis as it relates to health, as it relates to also housing and mental health care. One of the things that we're working on is the African American Holistic Resource Center to begin to turn some of those things then around and bring our community back to being healthy, wholesome, and vibrant. Let it be a place, like people say, a place for all. Truly let it be a place for all, not for those who can just afford the really exorbitant high prices to live here. It needs to be a place where people can, families can be here and be a part of our community. This is my community as well. Thank you.
You're the one that gets the post, and I'm not gonna.
Thanks everybody for coming out. I thank the City Council and the Mayor for putting this together. My name is Charles Gary. I came to go to school here 55 years ago. I've been here ever since.
We love you.
I would like to tell you that my heart has swelled sitting here this evening. I am the president of the board of directors of the flea market and have been for over 20 years. So hearing all of these really delicious comments have brought me a full heart, and I thank you for that. We hope that the flea market continues, of course, and if there is building on the flea market lot, which undoubtedly is in the future, we want it to be more low income. In the 55 years that I've lived here, I think there have been only a few totally low income housing developments built. There's one being built right now on San Pablo Avenue in Oakland, at the corner of San Pablo and MacArthur. It is 100% low income. That is what the flea market would like to see on the Ashby. And I thank you.
Hi, I'd like to echo some of what has been said earlier and address something up here, what values or principles should guide us. And what we need to be talking about is regional equity. We don't maximize the amount of housing we can provide here. We aren't just going to be kicking people out of their homes here in Berkeley. We're kicking people out of their homes in Oakland. We're displacing people all the way to Vallejo, even Tracy and Manteca. So we need to be maximizing what the amount of housing that we can provide. And a lot of this, there's trade-offs that prevent that. Some of them, are very worthy, like preserving the flea market. But please, if you're going to have trade-offs that prevent something from being built here, don't let it be spaces for luxury, toxic death machines known as cars. We are causing a humanitarian crisis through our tailpipe emissions and carbon dioxide. They kill 34,000 people in this country every year. The last thing that we should be trading away housing for people is housing for luxury toxic death machines. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alice, and people know me because I live on Prince Street by Ashby Bart, and I'm a beekeeper. I know you know who Einstein is. He had a brain that was a little different, but he had all his arms and legs. And some of you might remember the movie Rain Man. He was also a guy with a mental disability, and he could crunch numbers. And I'm not an Einstein, and I'm not a Rain Man, but I have a mental disability. And I just bring that up because when I try to, I guess I'm OCD that's obsessed with trying to figure out solutions to problems. And when I hear about people getting forced out of Berkeley, selling their houses, my neighbor bought their house in 1905, and I bought my house in 2007, and I come from a pretty poor family in New York, and my husband lived in Oakland, and he doesn't come from a wealthy family, and we had to scrape to save so we could move from Oakland to Berkeley because we really wanted to live in Berkeley. Because you have great schools here. My son's 13, he came when he was 2, and we love Berkeley. I've lived all over the world, and I love Berkeley. It's the best place in the world. You don't have to travel anywhere. Go ahead and do it because you'll only want to come back here. Okay, I'm sorry. So back to crunching numbers. So I think about people who, like on my blog, I went and looked at all the records and I saw like, okay, so the neighbor's house, they have to pay like $7,000 property tax, and I have to pay like $12,000 property tax. Okay, and my house was for sale for $425 right when the market crashed, and I'm thinking if people are buying houses for $1.2 million right now, where are the tax dollars going from the property tax? How can we say we don't have money? People, we have got to ask that question. I mean, so many houses are sold in Berkeley each year. There's got to be more money somewhere. Where is it going? Okay, and then the last thing I was going to say is, okay, thank you for a couple claps. I know I think very differently. I love the way Berkeley looks. I want to keep the look, and I've just been kind of over in West Berkeley a lot lately, and there's a lot of industrial land, and I went to the building department and I found out they want to preserve the industrial zone because they want to make jobs here. But the problem is we really need housing, and we have the BART for people to get around to get to jobs, and we have buses for people to get around. So I think, I heard from people that I talked to that the city of Berkeley's had a 30-year plan to just keep that as industry and then build up the corridor, but maybe we should start to think a little bit different.